Welcome back. Well, we're in this environment right now where it's known as the Great Resignation. A lot of people are actually leaving their jobs and some not pursuing careers, some doing other things, some challenging their employers because the fact that they felt like they were unfairly treated. Joining us now to share a little bit more about some things that you might need to know in the work environment. He's the author of a very special book. He'll talk about that in a few moments, but we've got employment attorney Stephen Mitchell Sack here. And Stephen, thank you so much for being with us.
It's really a pleasure to be here.
Take a time for a moment because, first of all, congratulations. You're the author of a book, right? And your book is designed to help people out. So talk to us about the book.
It's called Fired. It's a book on for everybody. It's fired, protect yourself and fight back when you're laid off, terminated, restructured, forced to resign or quit. In my 41 plus years as a practicing New York labor and employment lawyer, I spend most of my time negotiating severance packages for terminated individuals. Every firing is negotiable. I do it hundreds of times a year. And I decided to write a book which extracted my philosophies of how you negotiate and how you get more, no matter what type of firing, as I said, because every firing is negotiable.
And when we talk about every firing is negotiable, a lot of people were terminated during this recent COVID period. What has been your experience? I want to say, first of all, coming out of COVID, what can you tell us about how the employment world has shifted and how that's affected what you do?
Well, a lot of people now are still working remotely. Many people are not going back to the job, so that's an important factor. But essentially, the fact that people left after COVID or because of COVID really had no material difference from the other 38 years. I mean, we've been in COVID for a couple of years now. Like I said, especially if you are a person of color, if you are an older person, like in your 60s, if you're pregnant, if you have a disability, and you're terminated and you believe unfairly because of a personal characteristic, well, you should definitely raise your voice and complain about the firing and try to do better. Every firing is negotiable. In my practice, and I've represented, I believe, over 15,000 people in my career, more than 80% of the time, I get more money for people. And that's just because I appeal to corporate decency and fair play. I say to a company, my client has been here for 20 years. She's 66. This is probably her last job. She was terminated suddenly through no fault of her own. And you've offered her, a month's severance. That's not going to cut it. This is probably her last hurrah. She did so much for you during her tenure. She made the company X dollars. She saved the company, millions of dollars, whatever it is. She was loyal. She stayed through COVID. She never left. She, just did the best she could. She was a loyal and dedicated employee. And I think it's only fair and just that she get a better deal. And most of the time, the company will comply, especially using that type of approach.
Well, when you talk about being discriminated against or harassed at work, these are things that commonly occur, but yet and still people are sometimes afraid to come forward or really don't even know what to do, or they'll just bank out and quit, right? They'll say, I'm not taking that, I'll go somewhere else. But Stephen, talk to me about this here, because if a person is being discriminated against, harassed at work, what should a person be able to do with legal ramifications?
It's an excellent question. So first of all, you should know that under New York state and federal law, and especially under the New York City human rights law, which is the most progressive law in the country, anybody that complains about discrimination is protected against unlawful retaliation thereafter. So don't be afraid to complain to HR in writing. It's got to be in writing. A lot of people do it verbally, and as Samuel Goldwyn, the famous movie producer, once said, a handshake's only worth the paper it's written on, right? But you want it in writing so you have proof. And then if the company takes any action against you, like if you complain that you are being mistreated because of your age or your race or whatever, and you're in a protected class, or your sexual orientation, let's say, and the company then demotes you, reassigns you, fires you, mistreats you in any way, denies you a commission or a bonus that you were expecting, well, then you have a pretty strong case for retaliation discrimination. In many cases that I've found in my career, Proving discrimination is difficult, but proving retaliation, which is a form of discrimination, is kind of easy because you just show that, on, let's say, July 1st, I wrote an email to HR complaining, and on July 6th, I was fired, right? So the proximity of what happened to you, the negative inference is that the company retaliated against you, and the damages are significant. You mentioned another thing that's important. I don't want our viewers to think that they can simply resign. I think resigning is always a poor choice. When a
Mm.
person resigns, they are forfeiting valuable benefits. They're walking away from unemployment, from medical coverage, perhaps, and they're losing their mojo in terms of their strength of their claim. So I don't recommend resigning at all. I always recommend hiring a lawyer like myself to speak to the company before you want to resign to try to get you out of there with a package. Many times I have clients that have lined up and they're not happy at their current job and they've lined up a new job and then they hire me to speak to the company. And sometimes I get them a severance package and then they go right out and they have a new job lined up. That's the smarter way to do it.
Well, you think about it, resigning is sometimes a very, it's mentally, emotionally grueling. A lot of people take a lot of mental energy in thinking about it, but I don't think that people think about how to resign properly and how to resign in transition. Sometimes it's the weight of the experience, right?
Yeah.
I've been just going through this so long, and I just wanted to be over with. I just want to move on. But then, in many times, after so many years of service, you actually do yourself a disservice.
That's right. And that's why you shouldn't resign willy-nilly. You must always think about the consequences. You should try to negotiate a severance package or contact the company before you want to resign and say, I'm unhappy here because of the following. Or even this, suppose that you were a commission salesperson and you're about to get a commission. By resigning, you're forfeiting potentially a commission or a bonus or a pension and profit sharing plan that was about to vest or stock options. What you might want to do is in your letter of resignation, you might want to say the reason why you're resigning and that you are not expecting to forfeit those benefits. And if the company doesn't give you those benefits, then you're going to seek legal action. So there's a lot of steps and strategies to take. I think the best thing is to always confer with experienced labor and employment counsel before you're thinking of resigning, because I can turn that confusion into a positive for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to think about because, as I said, when it's resigning, a lot of people go through the emotional energy and then they just don't want to go that way. But walk me through this. I'm at a job, uh, and I hear the whispering by the water cooler that there's a possibility that things aren't going well. There's a potential for being laid off or mass layoffs. If I hear this, if I know about layoffs are coming, I believe that there is a strategy that you can employ to better assist, even when we know the layoffs could potentially be coming.
There are, and that's a great point. And in one of the chapters of my book, Fired, I'll just show it. People
Yeah,
get
please again.
okay, and it's brand new, so the book is just out. But one of the strategies that I assert is if you think that you may be fired, well, there's some preventative steps to take to protect yourself. First of all, you want to look. Some people have a contract, but they can't find it, so you might want to talk to HR and try to get a particular contract that you may have that you can't locate. You certainly want to talk to coworkers and get information about what the company does in a layoff, right? If you know you're going to be fired shortly, well, don't buy that house, and don't necessarily buy that car. I mean, conserve your money because you might be needing it later on and you don't have it, right? After you don't have a job. The other thing is you want to try to figure out how to negotiate a package and what you're going to say in the event that you're laid off. And there's a chapter in my book which I help people figure out. Like, you're not going to argue with the company. You're going to be cordial. You're going to be respectful if you're fired. You're going to say to them, look, I did so much for you. I worked here for 20 years. I have an expensive home in the Bronx. I have 3 kids in college. You want to appeal to their corporate decency and fair play. But you made a good point. The point is that if you think you're going to be fired, there are steps to take beforehand to protect yourself and to prepare. and rehearse what you're going to say when you're fired, right? You want to get all your documents in order. You want to figure out, it's much easier to get evidence if there's alleged wrongdoing from a company to you while you're working than after you're out the door, right? So that's important as well.
So when we talk about losing your job, it really is gut wrenching sometimes, especially if you have a lot invested. And when people have a lot invested, they feel robbed, they feel taken advantage of, they feel violated. And then we get to the place where we start negotiating with our job. Listen, if you're going to let me go, if this is the way this is going to go, we're going to have to make some, you have to make some concessions. And we know that severances are a part of those concessions. But too many people end up on the poor end of the stick, if I'm being honest, Stephen. When I hear about severances and what people say they're going to do, and I know somebody that's worked at a major corporation for a while, and they share with me the amount of severance in terms of time that they would be compensated. I said, that doesn't seem right. And
Right.
unfortunately, I think that somehow or another, corporations and businesses and organizations, they just get over it.
I am living proof that every firing is negotiable. As I said earlier, doing this for 41 years, more than 80% of the time, I get more money for clients. And by the way, I don't charge a fee for that up front. I work on a contingency. So if I strike out, it costs you nothing. But the point is, let me give our viewers some of the things you should be asking for. Let's say you've been in a company a long time and you're fired suddenly. We throw 20 darts on a wall. At 5 stick, we're ahead of the game. Ask for notice pay, because isn't it fair after 20 years that they don't throw you out in a second, right? And the most important thing to remember is never bow your head and shuffle your feet out the door. You have to go back in and ask for more. Many times you will get it. So you want to get notice pay. You want to get more severance pay. Here's a formula that we use. Try to get 1 month for every year of employment. Like if you've been there at a company for 10 years, try to get 10 months of severance pay. You may not get that, so then you'll get 5 months, 2 weeks per year. That's average, but you want to get that. You want to get the company to pay for your medical a lot more than. Let's say they terminate you and they say, "Here, Daren, we're going to pay you another month of medical." What's that? I need medical for a year, right? Until I find another job. It's a pretty easy ask, and most of the time, companies will pay for your medical under COBRA and give you more. Again, let's say you're fired right before the end of a year and you're expecting a bonus. Don't take that line down. Say, look, I worked 11 months into the year and I was expecting a $25,000 bonus. I got that every year. At least give me 11/12 of that bonus. You see what I'm saying? Or a commission that's about to be earned. Or let's say you're fired. So many companies fire people right before they're about to get stock options or equity or warrants or whatever. Don't allow the company to do that. You have to open your mouth. And if you do, more times than not, you will get a better deal. And then, of course, there's non-financial things like, why don't we negotiate a favorable reference, right? To say,
Mhm.
and maybe have a letter of reference, a simple letter of reference that says, to whom may concern, Daren worked here from blank to blank. He performed his services competently, and we wish him well in his endeavors. That's better than nothing, right? So you want to get a favorable letter of reference. You want to get outplacement, perhaps, or cash in lieu of it. There's just a whole number of negotiating strategies that you should assert. And, this is what I do. It's in the book, and this is what people should know about.
One of the things that I think about, Stephen, is the fact that when companies do try to get rid of you, or they do make a way of getting rid of you, they always want to keep it quiet. They want, they talk about this thing called the gag order. And I want to know from just a person that's the outside looking in, right? When should somebody cop to saying, okay, I'll take a gag order. I won't say anything about this. Or when should we be blowing the whistle and saying, hey, you know what? This happened and this is unfair.
It's an excellent question. The law has been changed in New York. If you are a victim of sexual harassment, you can't be gagged. So you have the right to complain about a company or talk about it after you settle the matter. So remember that. In other situations, I think it's fair that in exchange for a year of severance pay, you agree not to speak about the negotiation or the terms of the settlement, right? I mean, I think that's fair. it's adequate consideration that you're receiving in exchange for your promise not to talk negative about the company, right, which is a non-disparagement provision, and not talking about the terms of the settlement, which is a confidentiality provision. Most of the time, when I get good packages for clients, I recommend that they don't make a big deal about it and that they keep their mouths shut. Remember, loose lips sink ships. So it's probably it's a good idea to just go along with that. Companies are buying your silence because they're paying you off. Let's face it. There's no legal obligation to pay someone severance pay. But if you end up with a nice package, why not? Why not, take the high road? Don't talk about the company later on. I think you're better off. I would rather get a year's severance and agree not to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Another area, though, that's similar, that's related, is a restrictive covenant. Be careful if you get a separation agreement. See, most companies, when they fire you, they're going to give you something in writing. And the agreement says you have the right to consult with a lawyer. And it's really a good idea to do that because there's a lot of stuff in there that is foreign to non-lawyers and, you need protection. So one of the things that companies put in is maybe a non-compete, which is not a good idea to sign, right? Because you want to be able to earn a living. I would agree, though, for a clause that said you agree for like a year not to solicit or steal away employees of the company, like be a Pied Piper. That's fair. Some covenants that I don't agree with is, let's say you're in real estate and they don't want you to solicit customers or vendors or whatever that you brought in. I wouldn't agree to that. So there's a lot of, very minute areas that people have to be aware of, and they shouldn't sign an agreement really without having an experienced labor and employment lawyer take a look at it and advise them accordingly.
Yeah. Stephen Mitchell-Sack is the author of the book called Fired. And if you don't know where to get it, we're going to tell you before the show ends, or I should say before the segment ends, where you can get it. But I want to talk to you about this book because how long was it in the making and
Oh,
how does it feel now that it's finally out?
it's great. It's a great feeling. I wrote it. It took me over a year. I spent thousands of hours during COVID when I was laid up at home. I didn't go to my New York City office. And I said, let's do something constructive. And in a way, the book is a legacy because a lot of my philosophies are in there. Like, for example, when I negotiate a severance package for someone and I get them, let's say, 6 months of severance, sometimes I say to them, it's the summertime. Don't go out right away and look for another job. Take a couple of months off. Go to the beach. Do your flowering, your gardening. Take a trip with your spouse. You've worked so hard all your life. So these are the kinds of things that I give back to people. And the other thing is, it's important that everybody know that I too, I started out in this business 41 years ago. I was fired from my first job. And I was fired unfairly. And it really bothered me, like you said. It really kicked the crap out of me. And I decided
Yeah.
to fight back and start my own practice. And I got lucky in 1984. I was mentioned in a Wall Street Journal article about very few lawyers negotiated severance back then. It was just, they didn't understand it. They didn't know that you could. And I got lucky and I started doing it. And, 15,000 plus cases later, I do it all day long, sometimes 5 a day, generally with successful results. And I wrote Fired because I wanted people to understand that every firing is negotiable, that you have rights, especially if you're a minority, if you are over, 60 years old, if you're pregnant. I once won in the Bronx, a $6.6 million jury verdict with another lawyer, Scott Lucas. We had a jury award that for 3 pregnant women who were fired. Ostensibly, we proved because they were pregnant. So, you have rights. And I wanted people to know that. And I wanted people not to be afraid of speaking with a lawyer. I mean, I personally charge just a $300 consultation fee. I keep my fees down even now because I want to give back to the American public and give people, expert advice at a very reasonable cost. Then if they hire me to negotiate a better deal for them, there's nothing up front. I get, a percentage of whatever I get above. So let's say you were offered 3 months, you've been there for 20 years. And like you said, it was a lousy deal. You've only given 3 months and I get you another 3 months. Well, I get 1/3 of the extra 3 months minus the $300 you paid me. And if I get you more medical, which I usually do, paid for by the company, I don't charge you anything for that. I do it as a gift. So it's just, my nature to give back. And I think the book, will help people understand they have rights and what to do and not to resign so quickly, like you said, and what to do, what steps to take if unemployment is denying them, their unemployment benefits. I even tell people, how to protect their reputation if they're defamed or given a poor reference afterwards. There's a chapter on how to hire a lawyer and work with one. I have a lot of sample agreements in here so that people can use the agreements, look at what a typical separation agreement is, etc. So all I want to do is, help the world, and hopefully this book will do that. I also like to say that if any of your viewers want to call me and ask me a question, there's no charge. Can I give out my numbers that people can?
Absolutely, yeah, because that was going to be my next thing on how people can get in touch with you before we wrap up. Yeah.
Well, first of all, my name is Stephen Mitchell Sack, Stephen Sack, and they can call me at 917-371-8000. That's 917-371-8000. They can send me an email, which is Stephen Sack, ATTY, at hotmail.com. They can pick up a copy of Fired through I have a publishing company called Legal Strategies Publications, and they would order it legalstratpub.com. But more importantly, have people call me. If you have a question, you don't know what your rights are, it's my pleasure to help you. And I mean that sincerely.
Well, Stephen Mitchell Sack, I want to thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate uh, hearing your voice. I think you've helped some people out in terms of not just settling when it comes to the end of their employment, if they have a reasonable chance at really taking that company on and possibly getting some severance or negotiations. You definitely hit the nail on the head there. Thanks so much for being with us. Congratulations again on the book. Yeah, we got to bring it back.
Thank you. And again, thank you for advising your viewers that every firing is negotiable. Don't just bow your head and shuffle your feet out the door. Speak up, ask for more money. Most of the time you will get it.
All righty. Thank you so much, and I appreciate having you. All righty. Well, listen, got to take a quick break here on the show. We want you to stay with us. We'll continue with the social justice forums in a few seconds.